Hi friends, Mindy here. I am going to be setting up my journal to work through Who You Are from Bythewell4god. Similar to this book that I created for one another a few years ago, I am going to be doing an altered book. So I have taken this old book that I had in my stash and I found a receipt inside. I'm going to hold on to that, but I'm going to be tearing out pages so that I'm getting rid of some of the bulk of this book and getting it down so that I can work through my devotional, which is obviously 14 days, and still have enough room for this journal to grow. The spine isn't super large on it, and so I really need to take out a lot of the pages. One of the things that when you're doing an altered book like this, you want to make sure that you understand how your book is assembled. So if this, particularly with older books, a lot of times they're sewn, and so you need to be aware of that. If you go to Dollar Tree or something to get a newer book that you want to alter, you can certainly bet that those are probably just glued in, and that process is just a little bit different. So the reason obviously that you want to know that is if you are working with one that has been sewn, you need to start from the middle of the signature and kind of work your way out, because the pages are folded over and sewn. And so if you just go and tear one, then you've loosened up the page on the other side, if that makes sense. So sometimes it's easiest if you look top down, you can kind of see where those signatures are folded and then kind of get to the middle, because sometimes, especially in these older books, the stitching is really hard to actually see. You kind of have to pull apart the spine just a little bit, just gently nudge on it and you'll see where they come apart. And then another way to do that is kind of test the pages. So you, as you're kind of flipping, just kind of pull at the top. You can see what I'm doing there, and you'll see where the page is folded together. It will pull apart. So this is not going to be a super in-depth tutorial on how to actually do this process. I do have some videos on creating an altered book. I will try to link those down below. There was I think a 2 or 3 part series that I did a few years ago on how to do this. There's a lot of different ways, a lot of different ideas on how to do that. But this is just kind of my process. So I went through the first time, I pulled out a bunch of pages. You can see the stack over there to the right. And then I still needed to create more space. I still had way too many pages. So I'm going to go back through again. I'm going to find the middle of those signatures and just be very careful removing them. Okay, so really quick, I wanted to show what I have done so far with this journal. So this is the stack of papers that ultimately was removed. I will save these and use these in other projects, so don't fret. This is where we're at so far, and you can see how much space I have created now in the spine for all of my signatures. And it may seem like it's a little bit floppy, but by the time I add more paper back into this, it's going to get quite chunky, just like this one. So you need to make the space at the spine so that you don't end up breaking the spine in order to do this with an altered book. So one of the things that I have done is I went through, I sort of kept going through several times, pulling out pages until I got down to what I needed. Now, if you're doing this for like an art journal or something like that where you don't need a very specific number of finished pages, then you don't have to go through all of this process. You can pull out just a few, be a little bit more methodical about it and be done. But for me, I knew that I needed to have 14 finished spreads so that I could have that for my devotional, because I'm using it for that. And so I went through, and after I pulled out all the pages that I needed to do, I went through and I made sure to paper clip. So in areas where the signature, like the stitching was that you could see, I made sure to pull the pages around that and paper clip them together, because those are going to get glued together, and that's just going to add a little bit more security around the spine, especially where we've pulled out all of those pages, especially on the ones where there's a couple of the stitches that popped open. And then in some of these, so like here is a good example. This is just 2 pages that are stuck together that will get glued together, and then trying to find one where I think there's this one. It's the middle of a signature, but I actually have an added page. So there's 3 pages right here. And what I will do with this one is 2 of these will basically be to add security to this page. And then this one will somehow get folded or something to make to create a pocket on this page. So I just have a few extra pages in there to be able to make a pocket. So here Let me try to see if I can find one where I've done that with this journal. A lot of this was done with the actual pages from the devotional, but I was pretty sure, like this right here, this pocket is actually, this is a full page. I don't know if you can really tell, but this is the pocket from the book paper. And then I just folded that, and then I added pattern paper over the top of it. But those kind of pockets, if you kind of plan it out ahead of time, you can create those sort of pockets and tuck spaces ahead of time. And so I did that in this journal, and then, you know, wherever I needed to, I just covered it up with pattern paper, and it just becomes one cohesive thing. So that's where I have, not everywhere, like this one only has 2 pages together, and that will just get glued together. But where I have some that have 3 pages, like this one, it'll make this a little bit thicker, and that's okay too, but it will make it so that I can go in and just add a variety of pockets. So here you can kind of see this is where that stitching is. So I want to make sure that these 2 pages around that stitching get glued together. And then I have this extra page that I can turn into a pocket if I want to, or I can just glue it down and make them all 3 one signature. So I'm going to do that off camera, just kind of go through and make my pockets and everything, glue everything together. That part is a little bit tedious. So, and then we'll come back. I need to do a few little repair things here, which I will do before we actually cover the journal. But for right now, this is kind of where we're at with this part of the altered book. Okay, so off camera, I glued all of the pages together. It's really hard to tell, but it just gives them a little bit more stability, gives them a little bit more thickness. You can kind of see some of the pockets that I've created. A couple of these I haven't glued down because I'm not sure which side I'm going to actually want that pocket on. And also I want to be able to cover those in paper. And so I wanted to just kind of leave myself some options, but you can kind of see what this looks like. This part I may make 2 pockets out of. I'm not sure. If I don't, I will just glue them to the page. But I do need to add a little bit of a fix here for this little section where the spine is kind of just pulling away a little bit. So I'm going to use gaffer tape. This is a fabric tape. You could use, you know, bookbinder's cloth or whatever to fix this. I just cut a piece. It's just a super sticky tape, but that's fabric, so it stays flexible, and it's going to be fine there in my spine to fix that problem. And also, I'll just cover it up as I'm working, so I'm not worried that, you know, that it was black or whatever. By the time that this is finished, you won't even see it. So I have my fabric here. I have this yellow fabric, and I knew that this was kind of a light and thin fabric. And so because my book was originally green, I decided to add a bit of gesso over the top of the cover. I just added 1 layer. It was no big deal, but really just so that the green wouldn't kind of shine through that fabric. And then I trimmed it down to size, and here I'm going to go through, I'm going to kind of dry fit this and put some clips on just to make sure everything is where I need it to be and I have enough space, especially around the spine. I have to make sure that the fabric is going to wrap properly around it because it's got those little divots on the edges of the spine from the way that the case is bound. So I just want to make sure that I have all of that covered. Excuse me. So I'm going to start on the back cover. I'm using Cocoina glue for this. This is just a really sticky paste glue. I use this a lot for like covering journaling Bibles. If you've seen me do that, this process is exactly the same. And it just works really well. You could certainly use other types of adhesive, but I wanted something that wasn't going to seep through the fabric. So I didn't want to use like Fabri-Tac or something like that, which has a tendency to do that. So for this kind of project, Cocoina is one of my favorite glues to use. And so I am just making sure along this spine edge where that little divot is that I'm going to run my bone folder along there a few times. Just give that glue a little bit of time to set because I want to make sure that that fabric stays down in that little divot. Otherwise it will pull apart and it won't feel like as sturdy, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to work in sections. So I did the back cover. Now I'm doing the spine piece, and then I will come around and do the front section. Now on the front section, that little dip is much more significant than it was on the back. Probably just from the age of the book and everything. And so what I'm going to do, I'm still going to use the Cocoina in the tube here for the rest of it, but I do have some that's in a tub and it has a little paintbrush with it. And so I'm just going to add that down into there just because I really want to make sure that I'm getting glue everywhere. And so that's just really handy. You just certainly don't need to. You can run your glue stick along there, but I was trying to keep it from getting too clumpy. So that little brush works perfectly. So anyway, I am doing the same process. I'm going to kind of hold this in place, but I'm going to come back through that little section with my bone folder and really make sure that the fabric is down in there really well. And that's the great thing about Cocoina is it's very, very sticky and it works really well, but you do have a little bit of working time. So if you need to make adjustments, you can do that, but just it's very sticky. And like I said, I usually keep, in fact, like a baby wipe off to the side because I'm just always getting glue on my fingers and it's very sticky. So just a little tip for that. Now, I'm sorry you can't really see what I'm doing here, but I am cutting a couple of little triangles out of the fabric at the beginning and the ending of the text block where I'm going to wrap this fabric up into the cover. And you can kind of see here a little bit better. I'm going to do this at the top and the bottom. And then I also off camera cut it out. I just trimmed a little bit of the fabric out of the corners just so there's not so much bulk. So I added that glue across the top and then I'm going to add it across the bottom. Anytime you're covering or wrapping a book, you want to do opposite sides. So if you're doing top and bottom, do those together before you do the edge piece. And then I am adding just a little bit of glue along those little triangle sections there that are kind of sticking out. So you kind of want to just push that in with your fingers and then wrap the other piece around and that'll just give you a really nice corner there. And then I'm going to add my little clips back just while everything kind of dries and sets a little bit. And then I will do the same exact thing to the other side of the cover. I'm not going to make you watch me do that. The process is exactly the same. I am using a little bit of deli paper there just in case I have some glue that seeps out. And then I need to do the little top sections that are wrapping around the spine. And this took a little bit of coaxing on one of the edges, but you can kind of see I just stuck my paper clip down in there, sort of separated the spine from the text block and then tucked the fabric down in there. I did add a little bit of glue, but it's going to stay just fine. And then I decided to use the pattern paper to cover the inside. And I'm not going to do both sides of the front and the back cover. I really like the patina of this old book. And so I'm just going to add this collage paper over the section to cover where the fabric is. So I'm just marking this, making sure that I'm covering up so that I have a nice finished edge. With that, I'm going to trim it down. You can kind of see how that's going to look there. And then I will cut the same piece for the back section as well. I'm going to add some double-sided adhesive here. This is the scrapbook.com version, but there are others out there. This is just a really sticky adhesive that is going to make sure that this paper stays it's stuck down really well. And so I'm adding it in a couple sections and then I'm going to burnish it down really well. I'm using these are actually non-stick scissors and they work so good for this because I kept getting glue on my Tim Holtz scissors. So these scissors are just working really well from that. They're from Simon Says Stamp if you're interested. But for doing this, I'm going to just pull the release papers back part of the way and kind of fold them and create these little wings. That's just going to help me get this in place before I put this down because like I said, it's very sticky. So kind of getting it in place, making sure everything's lined up where I want to, and then pressing down the exposed adhesive, pulling off the backer sheets, and then I'm going to burnish that down with my bone folder and make sure everything is nice and stuck down. And then I did that for both sides, obviously. I wanted to add just a little bit of interest to the cover, so I decided to put the kit sticker on the front. This is just a white sticker, it's not a vinyl sticker. And so I'm going to add just a little bit of Cocoina glue on the back of this sticker as well, just to make sure that it really stays nice and stuck down to the fabric. And I did actually go back off camera and add a little bit of trim to the spine side as well. I'll include that picture at the end here. But if you liked this video, I would appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And until next time, bye.